is Finn Voices on the Healthcare Now radio, where we highlight and amplify the voices at the forefront of health innovation that improves people's lives. Join us for an inside look at the changemakers driving conversation and answering the most important questions in healthcare today. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome everyone to Finn Voices. I'm Goel Jasper and I'm here in Israel, one of the key global hubs of innovation in this world. I like to take a closer look at people involved in making health innovation happen, and that's why I'm sitting today with Adam Snukel. We'll get to him in a second. First, be sure to follow Finn Voices on Twitter at #FinnVoices. You can also follow me at Goel Jasper if the mood strikes you. Today's guest, Adam Snukel. He's a shareholder and a leader of the Israel office for global law firm Greenberg Traurig. His firm has more than, I love this on your website by the way, has more than 2,650 attorneys in 45 locations around the world. Like you couldn't say like more than 2,500 or more than 2,600.
It's all about the details.
For an attorney, I guess it is.
Yeah, it is.
Adam and I are kind of like kindred spirits. We both do all we can to help Israeli innovators get their products out there in a way that can make a difference in the world of health. So Adam, thank you for allowing me into your home. And welcome to Finn Voices.
Goel, thank you first of all for blessing our home with your presence. It's great to have you here. It's a long time coming. We should have had you here much sooner.
Yeah, I had to invite myself. What's that all about?
That's true. Your opening remarks, connecting me to you is very complimentary because I'm a big fan of Finn. Thanks. And I'm an even bigger fan of you. And you know, I see how dedicated you are to the healthcare, life science, e-health ecosystem here in Israel. You know, the following you've created for yourself and for your team is impressive. So cool. It's great to be with you, and thanks for the invitation.
Let's get to it. First of all, a little bit about you. I know you grew up in Canada, in Calgary.
Right.
How did you make your way to Israel? How did you make your way to health innovation and law, of course?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I've had an interesting journey. I would say actually a very blessed and fortuitous journey over the course of my life. I did all of my schooling in New York, my undergraduate, graduate, and then law school. In university, law school was, or the law profession was really choice number 3. Choice number 1 was to become a scriptwriter in Hollywood, and I had written, I wrote a lot of comedy while I was in
Right, you
college.
mentioned that to me before. Yeah.
Right, and sold comedy to up-and-coming stand-up comedians. I then transitioned to thinking about academia, and actually I have a master's in modern Jewish history and thought about that. And then I met my wife, and she was neither interested in marrying a scriptwriter nor a history professor. Right. And before I knew it, I was applying to law school. It's like, what's behind door number 3?
Yeah.
And even within law school, I was really taken by tax. And I thought, hey, you know what? Why don't I become a tax lawyer? And my second passion was technology.
But you're really taken by tax?
I can't explain it.
Some kind of like romance with tax?
It was a dark period of my life. I don't know what to tell you. I loved the technicalities and the details. Yeah. And there really is a lot of sort of Talmudic-like thinking within tax.
Interesting.
And I enjoyed that. But my second love was technology. I guess I sort of came to the realization I couldn't see myself being a tax lawyer for the next 40 or 50 years.
Right.
Technology, on the other hand, seems so vibrant and so dynamic and exciting. And also, I mean, you know, you and I are not exactly spring chickens. We're not old, but we're not young. I came out of law school during the first .com boom.
2000-ish.
Yeah, and it was amazing also to be a young attorney surrounded by older partners who, you know, some of them didn't know how to send an email. You really felt almost there was an opportunity to take on a leadership role within technology. So
just because they weren't comfortable with
they weren't comfortable
with
with
whole subject
matter.
matter.
I mean, never mind sort of more complex areas of technology, even basic rudimentary aspects of day-to-day administration. They were afraid, or scared, nervous, and not interested. And so, you know, if you had some inclination, some bent towards technology, you were put on deals, you were thrown, you know, right into the deep end. And so I had a lot of that very early on experience, and it was excellent. And in terms of healthcare, so healthcare really came about in sort of one of two ways. My father always said to me, look for areas of business that will never go away, that will never change. And right. In fact, even yesterday, I said to a group that I was speaking to, I said, you know, the two areas that I really spend a lot of time in are health tech or healthcare and fintech. I said, as far as I know, people are still getting sick, so that's not going away anytime soon.
Right.
And people are still using credit cards, or different payment solutions at least. I guess the other thing that drew me to healthcare was I knew I wanted to be a transactional lawyer, and I did have this somewhat idealistic bent within me, and I did feel like I wanted to try to make a difference, make the world a bit better. Being a healthcare attorney, I felt gave me a bit of that opportunity. Not looking at it through completely rose-colored glasses, but feeling like if I can help a company that's developing a cure for cancer or MS, or developing a new type of technology that monitors or collects diagnostics, and it's going to help create better efficiencies within healthcare, then maybe I'm doing my small part to make the world a bit better. We use the expression tikkun olam.
Right.
This was a bit of tikkun olam for me.
Because this is not an Israeli
show.
Yeah,
tikkun olam, right.
Repairing the world.
Repairing the world. Yeah. Repairing the world. That's right. Thank you. So again, it was sort of a 80% sort of business, really seeing a big opportunity, especially as healthcare was becoming more technologically driven. And 20% of this repairing the world and trying to pursue my, a more of an idealistic profession.
In the Israeli market, you deal with a lot of startups. Now, back in the day when you were an attorney in the States, were you also dealing with startups or more well-established companies?
I've always been attracted to and drawn to startups or venture stage companies. I just like the excitement. I like the how these companies can and oftentimes need to pivot so quickly, and I love that about companies. And also from a legal standpoint, one, you're always being kept on your toes, and you have to be what I call it equally legally entrepreneurial to go toe to toe with our clients. That I really enjoyed. But you're right. I was with a big firm in New York for many years, and we represented large pharma companies. We represented very large healthcare systems, which I think today really gave me a very interesting perspective because, Israeli entrepreneurs, particularly in the healthcare space, may have brilliant ideas, but have no understanding generally as to how to navigate the healthcare landscape in the US.
That's right.
Right? They just think it's as easy as knocking on doors and selling their wares.
Right. Or even more like, if they can find a physician who really likes their product,
exactly.
they're golden.
Right. They don't realize that the last person in the entire healthcare system that will put his hand in his pocket or her pocket is a physician. Right? And so, having worked for large pharma companies and large healthcare systems and HMOs and insurance companies and the like, I try to bring that realistic perspective to my engagements and also to the strategy, that our clients are building. Not just what to write or not write in a contract, but also I think this is the better entry point into the market, as opposed to what you may be thinking. And sometimes clients listen, sometimes they don't, but I think that experience gave me that edge that a lot of, especially the Israeli lawyers here, may not have because they didn't have that opportunity, that privilege to spend that kind of time representing, counseling, really big companies and see how they operate.
Putting aside the sort of like overall cultural differences between the United States and Israel, I want you to talk a little bit about any differences you see in the startup world in the US versus the startup world in Israel. Are there any big differences?
That's a really great question.
Because you've been in Israel for just over 10 years.
Yeah.
You practiced in the States for how long?
I think 13 years.
Okay, so that's
almost.
You've got a good lay of the land for both of them.
Yeah, or not good for either one.
Oh, okay.
No.
There's that commie writing background, right?
It's interesting. I think if we were having this conversation 7 years ago, I think the differences would have been much more apparent. I actually think the early stage startup nation culture and environment here in the last 5 years has really, I don't want to say closed the gap, because I don't know that there was a gap necessarily to close, but I think that the similarities are much more than the differences today between, the startup environment and whether it's, Silicon Valley, London, and in Israel. I think there's a lot more parity that exists today than before. And why is that? I guess, again, you can sort of chalk that up to so many factors. The world has gotten smaller. People travel much more. The Israeli market is so international.
Sure.
The same VC that's investing in a company in Silicon Valley is investing in a company in Israel and expects both companies to basically operate by the same playbook, more or less. So, and entrepreneurs, right? Who have started companies, sold companies to much larger companies, worked for those much larger companies, left after 2 or 3 years, once the shackles were removed, and then started the process all over again.
Right.
So they brought those experiences back with them. So many of my clients today, to use a Calgary reference, are on their second and third rodeo. Now, what differences do exist? One of the most important differences that I think still exists today is the role that the Israeli government plays. The Israeli Innovation Authority, formerly the chief scientist, is still funding a lot of very early stage companies that you don't have in the US. Right?
You don't have that relationship.
You don't have that relationship. You don't have that access to funds in the US or in the UK. There's something somewhat akin to the Israeli Innovation Authority, but I think in the US it's very difficult unless you're affiliating yourself with an academic institution like a university. It's very difficult to find that first $1 million or $2 million that really kind of get your business off the ground. And I'm sure with all the clients you've worked with over the years, you've seen time and time again where that early stage capital from the Israeli Innovation Authority really allowed product maturation, technology maturation, team growth, and allowed them almost, if not to get into the market, to get close to being market ready.
Yeah, we're going to continue talking about this after the break because I do have what to say from my perspective as well. But first of all, I just want to remind our listeners that you're listening to Fin Voices on healthcarenowradio.com. If you're just tuning in, I'm Goel Jasper, and I'm speaking today with Adam Snuckel, shareholder with Greenberg Traurig. We're talking about the role an attorney can play in helping health innovators get their products to market. So Adam, just to continue on what you were talking about before, I also think that the role of the Israel Innovation Authority pushes entrepreneurs to get their act together earlier, because already at that early stage, they have to demonstrate some kind of maturity in order to get that funding from the Innovation Authority. And so it requires them to say, okay, let's go. This is not just a cute thing. We've got to demonstrate that there's a business case for this.
Absolutely. And I think even more so today because everybody's sort of growing and learning. 10 years ago, I think companies were given a lot more room on the leash in terms of, not necessarily having a business plan, not necessarily having, being, a company that's on a whiteboard, right? And today they won't fly.
That's right.
Just you have smarter, more experienced people running the Israeli Innovation Authority, and as you said, I think even better than I could, there's an expectation that companies that are applying for these grants /loans, really are bringing something definitive to the table in order to receive them.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you talk about some of the changes you've seen over your last 10 plus years in Israel concerning how entrepreneurs are approaching business?
Yeah, sure. So I would go back to my earlier comment about a lot of my clients today, and even new clients. So many of my clients today are second and third time entrepreneurs. And that, to me, that means in some cases they've had, 1 or 2 failures, and they've, licked their wounds and have learned from what they shouldn't be doing or shouldn't do a second or third time. And by the way, that's not always the case. Some entrepreneurs somehow, continually can't get out of their own way. But I would say the vast majority of them do learn the lessons they need to learn, when they're starting their next company or their company after that. On the other side of the coin, you have entrepreneurs that had exits, that have tasted success. Right. It's a bit addictive. For many Israeli entrepreneurs and maybe entrepreneurs in general, and they believe that lightning can strike twice and 3 times and 4 times, and they bring that to the table. And what's also kind of interesting is more and more of these entrepreneurs are trying to bootstrap, especially the ones that have had successes and have the resources and the wherewithal, are trying to bootstrap their businesses much longer into the early stages of their existence, at least to the point where they feel that they're at the point where they're able to command, a respectable valuation,
right.
And not have to give a third or 50% of their company away for relatively small money. Now, of course, in the last 18 to 24 months, that paradigm has kind of been thrown out the window. I think by and large, you're seeing just an overall, level of maturity and sophistication. Now, sophistication, I would say, shows up in a few areas. One is, especially for these more experienced entrepreneurs, they understand there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? That you have to put in the time,
right.
You have to put in the work. You can't have a product that's half baked or even 65% baked, pull out of the oven and expect everybody to eat from it. It just doesn't work. It doesn't mean that a product has to be 99 or 100% market ready, but it can't be 65% ready. And even those trials, we'll use a baseball expression. You don't always get multiple swings at the plate, mm-hmm. In the U.S. And even in a trial, right, where you sort of paint it, say it, try to frame it as, give this a trial. We're working on the product. We'd love to get your feedback. If it's an abysmal failure, companies don't have the time to just keep trying products. Generally speaking, there are enough products in a market, in a product segment, right? There are enough solutions in a segment that that consumers, when I say consumers, I'm talking on enterprise consumers, have the ability to choose. And so if you're lucky enough to be able to sell them on a trial, and it doesn't go well, there's the chance of getting another swing at the plate is almost non-existent.
And so what role are you playing in all this?
So
because a lot of people think the attorney he just makes sure the company doesn't get itself into trouble.
Yeah.
But there's more than that.
No, there's a lot of strategy. So again, if we're focusing on the e-health or on the healthcare vertical, so the role that I play is really multifaceted. For example, I'm generally the one that's either drafting a contract or reviewing a contract. Again, it could be a trial agreement, right? Or it could be the actual definitive agreement, but I'm the one that, that's positioned to really oversee and handle the negotiations and sometimes the drafting, depending upon, who's on which side of the deal.
Right.
And again, one of the things that I think, I bring to the table, because I have a lot of experience, I've been doing this now for 23, 24 years, having spent time in the US, spent time here, I know what issues are worth fighting over and not fighting over in contracts. And sometimes when you're dealing with younger, less experienced attorneys where they feel you have to go for the jugular on every single provision, it just makes these contracts that should be, one or two turns a marathon or a triathlon. Beyond that, you want to talk to the client about, how do we protect the technology? How do we protect the IP? Is the particular product patentable, right? Mm-hmm. And should we be filing a patent? Should we be filing at least a provisional patent, if not a full patent application? Or do we want to treat it as a trade secret? And there's a clock, right? You can't sit on your IP rights, for 3 or 4 years and go, wake up one morning and go, I think we should patent this thing. No, there's a time period. So I want to get in early and at least begin to have those conversations with the senior leadership of the company. There's FDA, right? FDA, is becoming more entrenched, meaning they're trying to do a land grab and trying to make sure that almost any technology, any device, any solution that is in any way, shape, or form at play within a healthcare paradigm is regulated by the FDA.
Got it.
Okay?
Yeah.
So even things that traditionally we would say, hey, you know what, that's just a wellness app or a wellness solution.
Sure.
As these technologies become more complex and become, more sort of closer and closer to what we would consider to be a medical device, collecting so many different readings and diagnostics and information and data, right? The FDA is saying, no, that falls under our supervision, under our review privileges.
By the way, I'm actually seeing it from the other side also.
Yeah.
I'm seeing companies with technologies that don't necessarily require FDA clearance, still going for it as a marketing mechanism. Like, we're such a serious company that we even went for FDA and we didn't have to.
Right. So
it's both sides.
Yeah, but And I agree with that comment, and I'm seeing that a lot also. But usually what I'm seeing, and again, maybe your experiences are different, and I'd be very interested to hear your experiences. If it's absolutely black and white that the company's product does not fall, within the guise of the FDA, most entrepreneurs are not going to spend the money, take the risk. It's silly. So those companies that are saying, listen, let's use it as a marketing tool, they're already in that gray zone. They're already like the FDA.
That's right.
The FDA could easily decide, and what they don't want to have happen is they're in the market, right? This happens in one of two ways, as from what I've seen. They're in the market, and they get a letter from the FDA saying, "Hey, how come you never came to us with this product that requires our approval?" Or the other way I'm seeing this is, and I'm
which is not where you want to be.
Which is not, you never want that letter, right? But even more common than that is, you have to assume that, especially if you're contracting with large insurance companies or, large, healthcare systems, they have FDA counsel, right?
Sure.
And as part of the vetting process of any technology they're looking to onboard, somebody within the client, somebody within the client is going to do an FDA check, and they're not going to roll the dice.
That's a black and white issue.
So what we've been in a position many times where either we've had to defend why we don't think it requires FDA approval, right? Or ultimately we just capitulate, or the client capitulates and says, okay, hey, you know what? If you want the business, and again, this is one medical system, right? The next customer and the one after that and the one after that are likely to raise the same issues. We probably should just go for the 510K, submit the application and start the process. That's much more front burner today than it was 5 or 6 years ago, at least from what I'm seeing. And the last is, I would say, sort of just general compliance, whether it's privacy or other areas of compliance that entrepreneurs are much more attuned. And I think that to a large extent comes back to they've done these deals where they had to, read and agree to certain reps and warranties, whether it's in an investment document, whether it's in an acquisition document. So all they're doing is deferring the issue if they don't want to deal with it today.
Right.
So deal with it today, right? What do we say to our kids all the time, right? If you don't deal with it today, it'll be a much more painful and expensive, issue down the road.
Sure.
I think entrepreneurs learn that, and they're more willing to spend the legal dollars today and hopefully save money rather than have a bigger issue and potentially lose a lucrative deal down the road.
Yeah. Any companies you've worked with where you've been like, oh my gosh, this company is really going to change the world? And it's sort of a multifaceted question, because it's like, okay, and did they? Or did they not? And What have you seen in your travels, so to speak, in terms of companies that really did have a shot?
Yeah, to the extent that the client, gives you a seat at the table, right? And again, clients, the client attorney dynamic is different from client to client, right? Some clients, and I think to a large extent, I've sort of earned a seat at the table with many of my clients where they do feel that I have a reasonably good business head and bring strategy as well as the legal, the legal work to the table.
Sure.
So
as well as the technical side.
As well as the technical side, right? Yeah. So in those cases, in those cases where you have this incredible technology and and they're having difficulty fundraising, what do I do? So one, over the years, I have built a bit of a network of both strategic investors, venture capitalists, high net worth investors that are constantly looking for the next great Israeli innovation. And I'm always happy to open those doors. There are certain guidelines that I do require my clients, and I stress clients, because I don't just I'm not an investment banker, and this is this is not what I do for a living.
Sure.
So, but if I have a client and I believe in the client and I know the client has a real legitimate product, those are doors I'm very willing to open for.
Well, it's more than willing, though, right? Like, you want to, because you believe it'll help a company you believe in.
Yes, but again, there is a line. There is a bit of a fine line that we lawyers have to be careful not to cross.
Okay.
Right? I mean, listen, we're both trusted advisors for our clients.
Sure.
Right? And I guess for me, I never want to be in a position where I find myself in a position of conflict. Right?
Of course.
And so I have to be very, very careful about the introductions that I make and to whom I make those introductions.
Right.
So that's one area where I do try to go the extra mile for clients. The other is sitting and strategizing what type of investment vehicle makes the most sense for the company at this moment in time. Is it an equity round? Is it potentially a SAFE? Is it a convertible note? Is it an IPO? Is it a SPAC? Is it an acquisition? Is it a fire sale?
Right.
In some cases.
Yeah.
So kind of going through all the different options and figuring out, okay, what makes sense today, but also let's not make a mistake today that's going to haunt us a year or 2 years from now. So we do have to have a bit of a long-term vision, and I think that's I don't want to call it a mistake. Although I do, again, just between us, I do think it...
Just between us and all the listeners.
Correct, right. I do think many companies, including Israeli companies, did make mistakes by trying to raise money at the highest valuation they possibly could. And I know that some of your listeners, are you're saying this from your ivory tower, and you're not on the field, you're on the sidelines, and to a large extent that's true. But I do think that companies that tried to raise money and were successful at raising money at very unrealistic valuations were thinking about that moment, and we're thinking about, what if I have to raise another $5 or $10 million,
right,
or even $1 million?
Like you said before, the long game,
the
longer game.
Yeah, the long game. And it's also okay. I try to educate my clients, to go back to a baseball analogy. You don't always have to swing for the fences.
Right.
It's okay to hit singles and doubles and to have a reasonably good batting average, because really what I'm seeing, that's what investors want to see. They want to see good batting averages. They want to see recurring revenue, experienced leadership teams. They want to see customers that are not coming and going, but that have been there for the long run. Right. Confidence in the market. Good press, right, which is obviously where Finn, plays a very central role. That's all that stuff, in my mind, are singles, doubles, and maybe the odd triple. Right. But that's how you win games.
What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Certainly LinkedIn. I think
there aren't many Adam Snookles.
Well, I think I'm also the only Snookle at GT. So you can go to our website, gtlaw.com.
Okay.
But Adam Snookle, and SNUKAL on LinkedIn, and welcome the opportunity to hear from your listeners without sounding too melodramatic. It's really just to sit across the table from you and have this time. If I had a set of Israeli technology sort of playing cards, baseball cards, you'd be in the deck.
You love baseball.
You
love baseball analogies.
Yeah. I don't know. I do love baseball. Yeah, baseball and hockey. Canadian. I love hockey. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sitting with me, Adam. I know your time's valuable, and I appreciate you giving some of it to us today.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to hopefully many more conversations.
Definitely. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Finn Voices today. I appreciate you giving us some of your time today as well. To learn more about Finn Voices and to listen to previous episodes, go to healthcarenowradio.com. You can also follow us on Twitter, #FinnVoices, and you can be in touch with me on Twitter also at Goel Jasper. I'm Goel Jasper, and I look forward to sharing more Finn Voices with you next time. Until then, let's make a difference in the world. Bye-bye.
Finn Voices is brought to you by Finn Partners, a global marketing and communications agency working across industries and services. Whether inside our walls or on the front lines of health transformation, we stand together to create meaningful and measurable impact in the world around us. Learn more at finnpartners.com and follow us on Twitter @FinnPartners.